succeed.
Danny Stone was involved in environmental work in student unions. He also worked for the British Parliament and the World Jewish Congress. Does this mean he likes public work?
I certainly do, and I don't see a division between the two. The environmental work, Tikun Olam, fits in very well with my Jewish values, so I certainly like public work, and I hope maybe one day I'll be a leader in Britain, or who knows, the Jewish community.
Is that something that you were conscious of when you started doing the environmental work, the Tikun Olam aspect of it?
It certainly was. Keeping my Jewish values core to what I was doing was absolutely key to me and to my profession.
So how did you wind up working for the World Jewish Congress?
Well, I was very involved in the student movement. I worked for the Union of Jewish Students in the UK, and through connections at the World Union of Jewish Students, I came into contact with the World Jewish Congress. And given that background, they thought that as a young leader, they would invite me to their World Jewish Diplomatic Corps program. And that's how I come to be here and have been taken to quite a number of really very interesting high-level events.
It sounds as if you're consciously striving to be a leader. I mean, in fact, you've almost said so. Is that something that you plan out? How does one set out to become a leader?
I think there's two parts to it. One is, I suppose in everyone you have a natural inclination towards leadership. Some people won't have it, they're inner directed, but some people will. So for me, part of it was natural, part of it was inspiration from my parents, I suppose, and then another part of it is detecting a gap, detecting a vacuum, and then wanting to fill it. And so I set out, looked at what there was available, and set my course by looking at those spaces and how I could fill them.
And so, on behalf of the World Jewish Congress, you were involved in diplomatic work at the United Nations on the occasion of the visit of the Iranian President Ahmadinejad. What kind of work did you do there?
Well, it was obviously worrying given his pronouncements about Israel and obviously his delegitimization of the Holocaust. So specifically there, we were trying to ensure there was some recognition, remembrance of the Holocaust. We joined with Holocaust survivors to lobby politicians, lobby civil servants and delegations there to make sure that they understood the seriousness of the issue in giving him a platform.
Is that work that you did in the United Nations, did you incorporate things that you learned in your environmental work into this?
No, that was more from what I learned in the student work. I also happened to work in Parliament for 2 years with Lord Janner, a British Jewish member of the House of Lords, and so I think some of the diplomatic work that I'd learned working with him, I was able to put into practice then.
And what did you learn from working in the United Nations as a young Jewish diplomat?
That the wonder of the democracy is reflected by very unfortunate bureaucracy, and that to get anything done you need to be patient, you need to be courteous, but ultimately you need to be passionate. With so many people there, you need to be able to make a difference. And so being proud and being passionate are very key.
Are you at peace with your Jewish identity, or do you have questions about it? Do you question it occasionally?
I suppose I do question it. It changes. I was here for a year off, and I was probably more to the right in terms of Israeli politics. Now I think I've come back to the left, which is where I started. So I'm always on a journey. I think there are certain constants. I'm proud to be Jewish. My Judaism is cultural more than religious, and I suppose there is where my debate happens over where the religious side of my Judaism is.
So what are the underpinnings of your cultural Judaism?
That I believe that I've got a collective memory, things I learned from the past, be it, and I know this sounds contradictory with what I said about religion perhaps, but a Friday night dinner, sharing time with the family, being with friends, going to Israel rallies, hearing Jewish music, doing Jewish dance, that for me underpins my Judaism.
So very much a sense of community.
Absolutely, it's a peoplehood.
And what do you see as the challenges of these communities, of the Jewish community in Europe?
The biggest problem, I think, is obviously environment is a big issue for me, and I think the Jewish people have to be leading the way on environment.
Why so?
Because if we're supposed to be a community that expects to be judged by higher standards, to be taken serious, to be a light unto the nations, we've got to take that leadership role. But equally, youth is a real problem. The lack of young leadership coming through is a concern for me and something I'm going to try and work on, both in Britain and across the world where I can.
Where do you see yourself in 20 years' time?
Well, I'd like to be, well, not necessarily in Parliament, but certainly working behind the scenes in the political world, trying to influence policy, most likely at a high level for charities. I think I'm bound to do good work but get paid little.